Hi, friends. So today we are going to record a discussion with one of the candidate who is going for an interview this week. And we will try to make sure that it's useful for every level of experience. So from 1 year to 5 years to project managers to architect. We'll try to cover all sort of questions in this discussion. It's not an interview as such. She has already participated in the mock interviews last week. You can watch that. This is next level to make her ready for the interview. So very much some of the questions are going to be relevant to the job description, her experience, and all sort of things. So watch till the end, and we will try to make sure it's relevant for every role and everybody who is watching. Let me admit. Hi, Jagdeep.
Hello. Hey, how are you?
Must be very early for you.
Yeah, it's 2:30 a.m.
Thank you so much for taking time, and we'll try to, make sure that it's useful for you. So when is your actual interview?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay. And you are ready, I believe, with all your prep. Saurabh also did a mock interview.
Yeah, I prepared according to his guidance as well, so I think it should go well.
All right. So I have looked at the job description as well as your resume also. So it's more, I'm
Okay.
not planning to do it in the mock interview format,
Mhm.
more to, guide you if possible with whatever I could assess. And you may already have covered those things, but just to emphasize what words and what language you can speak, maybe that would be helpful.
Yes, definitely.
So I looked at the job description, and this is for a senior role, right? It's a the operations manager role. So have you performed that role in past?
No, actually, it's a step up for me. So I have been acting manager, but not proper manager.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And this is specifically job description talking about some compliances in the
Mhm.
cloud. So have you worked in a environment where compliance assurance is relevant?
Yeah, so I've been part of a few audits, yearly audits in Accenture. So implementing that Python code, getting the risk score for various ADFS roles, and then comparing it with the previous year and presenting it to the higher management and doing the remediation
What
steps. So
sort
it
of
was
audit was this like which audit?
it was related to the IM roles on AWS. I don't know
So
exactly
usually the audit,
which.
yeah, audit will have a number or name of that audit, or at least the industry of that audit is relevant. So try to understand if that audit
Mhm,
that you were part of, was it banking
mhm.
related audit, or
Banking.
was it healthcare, or because audits are like compliance and these things are relevant in different industry. So
Uh-huh.
healthcare goes through HIPAA and a lot of other compliances. Insurance goes
Uh-huh.
through other compliances. Banking goes through their own.
What are the audits for banking sector? It
Uh,
was the bank. It was a bank, actually.
so I'm not sure. Again, it's regional. So, for example,
Okay.
European banks and all are GDPR compliant. Uh, s- uh,
Okay.
in Australia, there is a compliance called APRA. So it's APRA. So that's relevant. So that's applied on most of the Australian banks.
Okay.
Um, so what generic answer, what sort of answer that typically will fly on all such things is that they will ask you, have you worked in a compliant environment, or what's your understanding of specific, what's your approach going to be? So what would you answer in that case?
So I would say that we have used various tools for compliance. So for basically AWS, we were using AWS config,
Mhm.
and we mentioned compliance rules in it. So accordingly, it was evaluating our infrastructure. Similarly, we were also using AWS organizations to have a multi-account setup, and with the with the best standards in security practice. For that, we were using AWS Control Tower. And I've been part of audit for a banking client, and we were analyzing the risk score for various ADFS roles, and presented my findings to the higher management, and did the remediation steps to make the IAM roles more secure and to limit the authorization and authentication.
Right. Yeah, this makes sense. You talked about the services, but you can go further next level while talking about audits, because if any organization has to compliant with an audit, typically that is their first priority, because the customers may be unhappy, is probably secondary thing. Customers become secondary in case of a audited environment. So you can talk about that you had set up AWS Control Tower. A lot of policies were implemented which ensured the status of the accounts are compliant. You implemented different policies. Policies are of two types, like reactive and proactive. So proactive is where you, in the process itself, you set up some rules where your non-compliant resources will not be created at all.
Okay.
So these sort of controls you can embed in the form of CloudFormation or Terraform policies. In Azure also, there are Azure policies that you can configure. So that will prevent these resources to be created at upfront. Then reactive controls are where it will monitor the account and will identify the resources which are not compliant, and then somebody will take action. So they are like you are reacting to a situation. So you can talk about that scenario. What else? You can talk about some sort of reports in detail, what reports were generated, any findings, or also talk about some examples of these risks or examples of these controls that you usually place. The typical controls are the buckets being not to be but buckets being encrypted always. You can talk about that none of any of the EC2 instance will not have a public IP address. It will be ALB, or it will be some other resource which will ingress to your EC2 instance, or that kind of thing. You can talk about all the data at rest going to be encrypted. Data in transition is going to be encrypted. So that usually most of the compliance will have these things. So it will be relevant across.
Okay.
Make sure you touch upon this, that you have worked in a compliant environment. You have generated reports, you have implemented policies, reactive, proactive, both kind of controls you have implemented. That should give you, because as I mentioned, compliance, if it is there, it is the number one priority.
Yep.
All right. Now, because you have not worked in this role, what is your plan to lead the team? Because they expect you to lead a team of, say, 10, 15, whatever number of people. What's your plan? How do you plan to execute the project?
So I've when I was in Accenture, so I was the one who was handling the Scrum calls every day. So we were discussing the incidents every day. So if there was a new incident, so we were sharing with every team member and creating the knowledge documents. Secondly, if the issues were priority 1, priority 2, we would get into the war rooms and the communication to the affected stakeholders, and the stakeholders who will take action, like the dev team, engineering team. So all of us would go on a war room call. So I was the one managing that. So that is kind of leadership, proactively resolving the solution. So I was thinking something like that.
Yeah.
What else?
So what would be your suggestion when you are managing a team which is sort of operations team? Would you go with a Scrum approach, or would you go with some other approach? What's your thought process?
I think with the Scrum call, because that was very effective for us while we were handling the support team. So we would get on a call every day, discuss the incidents, and if somebody has more insight, they will share their knowledge. And this helped us create that knowledge document. So whenever the incident reoccurs, we are able to resolve it quickly within the SLA. So I would go with the Scrum approach.
Okay. So what happens typically, just a thought, because you have worked in Scrum process, you can explain that, but also talk about some other approaches if possible. Talk about Kanban maybe, because what happens especially in operations projects, the activities are not very predictable in nature. So for example, a P1 is there, you talked about, right? So even if you have Scrum is where you are planning for 2 weeks or 3 weeks of Scrum. So it is very suitable for development teams, testing teams. They know that these are the stories going to be built and deployed and tested and released. But an operation team is different. So they don't know what P1 issue is going to be there in the environment tonight and what our priority is going to be tomorrow. So if any P1, that becomes priority. So Scrum, you can mention that you have worked in the Scrum environment, and also you plan to look at the organization, their culture and all, and you will look at Kanban as an opportunity in this because it's very unpredictable sort of workload, and any critical issue takes priority. Even certain non-critical issues take priority, like they may not be P1, but to unblock some development teams, to unblock some other people, you have to take, you are changing direction in an operational team. So how you plan to do it? Same process. You will still conduct the daily stand-ups, but with the Kanban mindset that there are going to be in a Scrum. Typically, there is a metric that after planning, you typically don't change or add additional stories to those 2 weeks, 3 weeks of planning, because that also goes against a lot of Scrum processes. That in Kanban, that's not the thing. Like you have some tickets in backlog, some in progress, and some completed. So that is the main process that you can think about. You can maybe study about it a little bit.
Okay.
And then that way you just come out as an expert that you know both the things. And if at all, just assume that, just think that if they are using Kanban, that then you struck codes there that yes, she knows both these things. And if they are using Scrum, then you anyway can justify. So you don't know actually what they use. There is a good chance that they may be using Kanban also.
Okay.
What other strategies do you have in mind? Have you looked at the product? What does the product do? What area does it deal into? Do you know about our company?
Yes. So I went through the company's website, and it has various software utilities for mining. So basically they have this smart cap, like you have the smart cap, which is very useful for the miners on the surface. So it provides them with a better understanding of their environment. So it collects data of the surrounding and sends it to the cloud, and it gives you warnings according to the surrounding. Then also as I read, you're also managing fleet management data you're also using fleet management data analytics and another thing. So I think I will be able to contribute to that on the digital front, and I can handle the AWS Cloud platform and also monitor the performance of the application, as the availability of the site is very important here. So I think I can contribute to that.
Okay, what do you mean by fleet management?
I think by fleet management, like if we have any sensors in the mining
okay,
area. So we'll be able to collect data from those sensors, and accordingly we can see which area has better collection of the minerals. So we can dig there, and it will be more relevant area to dig in.
What do you think would be the biggest challenge for this application? Because it is mining app. What do you think is probably the biggest challenge for managing this application?
I think that real-time collection of data from the sensors, sometimes the sensors might not work, or they might, according to the environmental situation, they might not be able to transmit the data over the internet at the same point. So I think that would be the biggest challenge. So we can think of sensors which have a battery backup, and whenever they are able to connect to the internet, they can transmit the data, and we can do the analytics on our part.
Yeah, this just came to my mind because I looked at some of the case studies in this area. So their biggest challenge is usually the availability of the services. As you mentioned, because of environmental issues, the devices sometimes are not able to connect to the network, and the Wi-Fi is not stable, or those sort of things are not there. So in such cases, a lot of edge services of AWS comes into picture. So make sure you study about the edge services, whether it is anything to do with Lambda at edge or CloudFront, those sort of services. Because before the data comes to the AWS region or the availability zones and all, these are the services where you collect very bare minimum sort of data. And you just talk about this scenario that in case they ask you, how you plan to do something, you're going to work with the architects about with the application, understand what sort of architecture the application offers, and look at opportunities, because you understand the issues the agents or the people who are submitting the data might be facing, and will try to make the applications better available to them.
Okay.
So what is highly available? Do you have understanding of that? What do you mean by highly available application?
So highly available application is it means that the application is available even after going through a disaster. So application should be up and running, and should be able to provide access to the people, and it should not affect the stakeholders actually. So like for AWS S3, we have availability of 4 nines. So that is what AWS is trying to achieve. So something like that application should be up and running in spite of the failures in the backend.
How will you ensure an application in AWS is highly available despite failures?
So I think we can plan for disaster recovery. We can have some disaster recovery strategies like backup and restore. We can have a pilot light, like some critical parts of the application are still up and running, and we can ramp them up as needed. Maybe a warm standby, that is a small version of the application is always up and running, and we can scale up when we need to. We can also have a multi-site approach, that the application at the large scale is always up and running, and we can just, if there is a failover, we can just switch to the secondary application. And also we can do multi-region approach. So that will cost us more, but again, the application would be more available in case of failures or disasters.
Perfect. You have cracked this one perfectly fine. These are the 4 or 5 approaches that are possible in a highly available environment. Try to go a little beyond theory. This was a little bit of theory aspect. Go beyond that, how you can use additional AWS services to route traffic. And also, when you said multi-region and all, make sure you add the words blue-green deployments there.
Okay.
So you have multiple sites and blue-green, and also make sure you enter some of the keywords like, I will assess, work with the architects, work with the teams upon the availability requirements, and based on that, we will select a right approach for this. Because whenever you
Okay.
go from basic backup and restore until blue green, the cost increases on this. So you will make sure perfectly which is the better option for the customer.
Okay.
All right. So this is a SaaS product that they offer. Do you know a bit about SaaS product deployment? Any architecture do you understand?
Um, so like SaaS is a software as a service. So the software is already up and running, and we just have to use it. So we don't have much um, access to changing the backend infrastructure or the application. So I think the deployment, I don't know. I don't
No worries, no
know.
worries. So typically SaaS products are multi-tenant in nature. So
Multi-tenant, yeah.
they are offered to multiple customers,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
that's the advantage, right? Otherwise, it's another product hosted in cloud, which only my company is using. Then it's a product for my company. But this being a SaaS product, you should assume that different mining customers are using this, and
Mhm.
they will be probably have a single entry point for themselves, but behind the scene, their data and everything will be isolated from each other. So you can
Okay.
say that, or if you have some experience in past, you can correlate to that,
Uh-huh.
that yes, I have managed or I have deployed a SaaS product. The entry point was my customers were coming to CloudFront first. Then based upon the host that they, for example, SaaS products will typically have, I don't know which one. For example, you use Jira or something in the cloud. So
Yeah.
Jira is a SaaS product deployed by Atlassian. So
Mhm.
they will, for your URL probably would be say jagdeep.jira.net or something. My endpoint would be sanjeev.jira.net something. So my request will go to uh, uh, um Route 53, where it will be decided that this is the domain controller that is managing this domain. So jira.net, just assuming, goes to that endpoint. Then cloud, it will be routed to and CloudFront distribution, where Lambda at edge or any such service will decide that this is your tenant, Jagdeep tenant, or this is Sanjeev, and then based on that, route it to the appropriate service. It could be a load balancer or any such service behind the scene that you are using. And that's how, based upon the host information, the routing happens. So you can talk about that, that typically you have managed or you have seen the SaaS products are multi-tenanted in nature. So I will look at the compliance requirements. I will look at opportunities that you are managing the customer data in isolation, that all the customer data is managed differently from each other, and that's how your approach will be. Or you
Okay.
have some understanding of a SaaS product, multi-tenant product. Just talk about
Mhm.
that a little bit.
Okay.
Have you understood that they are using Azure DevOps to manage AWS resources?
Yeah, I read about that. Just give me a minute. I have to get the charger for
Yeah,
the
sure.
laptop. Sorry.
No worries.
Sorry.
That's fine. So we were talking that you understand, right? They are managing their AWS resources through Azure DevOps. Even on
Yeah.
my channel, typically I ask people to experiment with different tools. Even
Mhm.
a lot of companies don't use AWS DevOps services, so they prefer Azure, GitLab, or those sort of services. So make sure, have you got experience with Azure DevOps?
I did like POC on that, and I have idea on this, and I find Azure DevOps to be much better than AWS. So I can explain on that a bit, but like according to the POC that I did.
How did you connect your AWS account
It
to
was
Azure
on
DevOps?
Azure. The connection part, I have to look into that.
Because that's where some of the questions could be, because their job description is very security focused. So you
Uh-huh.
can talk about that some sort of credentials were created that were stored in the Azure credentials or Azure Vault and then retrieved by Azure DevOps at runtime. Okay, again, a lot of focus on security in this, cyber security. So what's your experience with cybersecurity? How and to
Not much
manage?
with the cybersecurity, but securing the application and EC2 instances, like securing EC2 instances with security groups, securing subnets with the NACL policies, the NACL rules,
Mhm.
um, IAM policies for providing, like following the least principle of least privilege. So I have experience with that, but not with cybersecurity per se.
Okay. So here you can talk about a little bit on, if you haven't worked so much on cybersecurity, you make sure you talk about DevSecOps. So you are covering the cloud security point of view properly. Try to, because it's a product, try to bring the security early in the cycle. So start from the application security also.
Okay.
So talk about that you have integrated some security products in the pipeline, which will scan the application code or the container images upfront. So we discussed, right, in the projects, we talked about JFrog, X-Ray. We talked about Sneak in one of the projects. So make sure you talk about these words that that you are, or typically, since you are not a cybersecurity expert as such. So I typically mention to them that I don't label myself as a cybersecurity person. I'm more of a cloud architect, and security is one of the uh, line within this that I manage. Apart from that, I look at operational efficiency and cost management and all aspects as well, and automation, of course. So you talk about that you are aware of the DevSecOps principles. You have implemented security products early in the pipelines. So security products like checkmarks, Veracode, if you have implemented, if you are aware, but otherwise you can read about it also quickly. These are all of them typically do the same thing with minor differences. So just get a YouTube video to understand that. Sneak, even SonarQube provides some of the security features. So you implemented such features, and you have implemented some quality gates, so that if there is any P1 issue found by these tools, then you will break the builds and you will not progress. Container
Yeah.
security using X-ray, JFrog X-ray, and all these sort of things. Also make sure some sort of runtime security also you cover. So Aquasec is famously used by these such organizations, which will also monitor your runtime, your environment which is running.
Okay.
You can talk about some services like AWS Inspector, which reports a lot of issues on the EC2 instances.
Okay.
So here, basically, you are adding that you understand.
Here, can I also add the services like AWS Shield, AWS WAF, so Wirefall for
Yeah, you
Wirefall
can. Yes,
and for
yes,
DDoS? Okay.
yes, we can. So you can talk about them. make sure that, because they're coming as cybersecurity, you are adding DevSecOps, which means you are shifting left their security activities. You're starting from their development itself. Then you are talking about securing the artifacts using X-ray or some such products, Docker images. And you are then going on to the final, when it is running in the production, you are talking about Aquasec and products like AWS Inspector, which is vulnerability management of the running instances.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of focus on security in this job description, cybersecurity and audits, that kind of thing. What is your understanding of this site reliability thing they have mentioned in the job description? So it's a
So site reliability is that the site should be available, should be available to the customer with very less downtime. And the key matrix here would be the application uptime, throughput, the application output, and the so basically this, and here the site reliability is bridging the gap between the SLA, SLOs, and SLIs. So SLO is the service level objective. So the measurable so for the SLO objectives are the objectives that we try to achieve for the measurable matrix. So like the application downtime or the recovery time. So that is what is acceptable, and that is declared in SLA, that is service level agreements. And SLI is the actual number that we are achieving in our application. So bridging that gap between the SLO and the SLI, that is the main function of the SRE. And we can do this by monitoring our application, increasing the observability of our applications, and taking immediate action to resolve those issues. Yeah.
All right. I'm assuming you would have studied SRE aspects and theoretical. Try to give some examples, or try to give, like, limit the theoretical part. A lot of your questions are coming as studied responses rather than experienced responses.
Okay.
So give some references of your experience, or try to bring such word that I have worked on this thing in so and so organization, because otherwise it looks as if you have studied and memorized this, and that just getting that feeling. So if you just add as per my understanding or what I understand, that sort of keywords. I know they are not great keywords to add, but sometimes they divert the language that you are talking from your experience rather than and try to have some example if possible in these critical stuff. And, don't go to SLI, SLO and all those if possible, like give some more generic examples. Like SRE, you would expect that they use extreme automation to manage the site. Their metrics are uptime, you mentioned. If you go to SLI, SLO, a lot of people are not aware and they don't use these terminology that much. Even though theoretically you will see that, but people don't follow that that much. That's my experience.
Okay.
So you also don't drag it to their, bring it to your experience that they use a lot of automation, all sort of infra as code, policy as code, reactive controls, proactive controls is probably the better definition of an SRE principle, because they are using a lot of automation. They will not allow things to go wrong from the upfront before things can go wrong. And after something goes wrong, there will be monitoring notifications configured. So it's basically taking your DevOps monitoring practices to next level.
Okay.
Okay, what's your stakeholder discussions, or what sort of stakeholders have you managed in your previous projects?
So basically, I've worked for major banks, European banks and US banks, and the applications that we were handling, they were basically the internal applications. So like the applications which are being used within the bank, not which is not open to the customers. So the data was encrypted even in the internal applications.
No, that's not
And
that's not the question I have. See,
uh
data encrypted is not my question. My question is, what stakeholders have you interacted with,
Okay.
right? And that will give an idea that are you a developer, are you a lead, are you a manager, project manager, or are you a program manager, or what? So you have to be careful because you are going for a senior position. The stakeholders cannot be uh, basic, like I work with a product owner, I work with a basic engineer, or that sort of thing. So you have to take it to next level.
Okay.
I think even in the last interview, there was this feedback that your answers were not matching with the question. So you have to be very, very careful. Some of the answers were not in line with the question.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. Have you managed stakeholders in your past roles?
Not much actually.
Okay, so that's not probably the right answer.
Yeah.
You know it, right? You know
Yes.
that because you are going to be managing a team. So for a service manager, they need to talk to a lot of the stakeholders, different engineering teams, teams who are building the product, your own team which is managing the project. Then you are gonna talk to different business units, different stakeholders, like, and this specific role anyway reporting to CTO and uh, customers and all sort of things. So you try to bring your experience where you have the auditors for that matter. So try to bring as many stakeholders from your previous discussions, as many C title holders, senior people, bring those into conversation.
Okay.
You can uh, start with basic thing that you have worked closely with the program managers, the architects. These are very, very basic sort of thing. At least you make sure that cross team communication comes out. If not, you can't, if you are like, for example, you work at a very large bank and you can't reach a CTO or CEO for discussions, but make sure that you talk about your experience, your conversations with sorry, cross teams, different product owners, architects, design forums where you have presented some solution that your team has built, that kind of experience.
Okay.
I think that's all. I think incident management also is one of the question. How do you manage a critical incident? You found out that some of the services are not running. What would be your immediate action would be?
So I have worked on incident management in Accenture. So we would get our incidents in ServiceNow and they would be marked with a priority like P1, P2, P3, P4. So if it's a P1 or P2, we would get into war rooms and we'll firstly, we will send the communications to the affected stakeholders. So a mail would be shot out to all the stakeholders stating that we will resolve it within the SLA, which is 2 hours for P1. And then we'll get into war room, all the engineering team, development team, and the support team, even the vendor if needed. They would get on the call and resolve the issue. We would go through the laws, go through the matrix, maybe through the traces that we got through X-ray, and we would try to pinpoint the issue and then take the immediate action. And if we are able to fix it and it's a temporary kind of solution, we'll do a RCA later on, and we will build a permanent solution for it, and that will go to a Jira, and then the development team would work on it. So accordingly, again, a communication mailer would be sent to the stakeholders that it's fixed permanently now.
Perfect. So yeah, you have talked about multiple stakeholders there. Do you recall? Vendors, engineering team, operations team, and probably a few more. So those are the stakeholders, goes into the previous question. So
okay.
And in this also, yeah, you try to bring your experience, because this again sounds like you are getting tickets and you are resolving a ticket. You have to probably show up as the manager. So you say that as a manager or as a lead, we created some workflow in our organization that any incident will go through this process. As soon as a P1 incident, which is impacting our customers, notifications will be sent out. Some companies use email-based notifications. Some organization also list the status page, update the status page also, that if their application is down, their status page will be maintained, where when somebody comes, they log in to say you are managing a critical application and it's not running. So a status page will be there, that there is an issue, investigating. The ETA is important. Make sure that you talk about that. We publish that the estimated time for this incident is 2 hours. And while the team is investigating, you make sure that your customers are notified on timely basis that the issue is, the root cause has been identified. We are working on resolving this, and the updated ETA is this much. And then finally, when you close it, you update that the issue is resolved. That sort of a workflow you created, or you take credit for that workflow. You say that as a lead, I created a workflow for my organization team. They were following the practices, but it was not documented. It was not proper. And that's why the team had missed some SLAs because they were not following this, and the communication was not proper. So you created some templates for communication. You created some best practices of informing ETA, and keep the communication channel open until the issue is resolved, and then ensuring that the root cause analysis is performed and taken to closure. So you make sure that this process is something you implemented for that organization. So you take, that you have implemented this. Then it sounds as if you have led a team and you have managed it, and you can, even in their organization, you can bring some changes also.
Okay.
I think that's, I would say, enough. Otherwise, it's tomorrow. So you try to get into these language and these words. And if you speak just a little bit of this one, I'm sure that if they see that that you have worked and you don't make up like sound as an experienced person rather than theoretical. That's the only thing I would say. Last feedback. So try to add experiences and make sure that in your mind you have built those experiences, that if this is the question, I'll relate it to past experience of mine.
Yeah. Yes.
Anything you want to ask before we close?
I think I'm good. I just have to formulate my answers better.
Yes.
So I'll work on
You're
that.
not going to read it from the paper, right?
No.
Right now you are making some notes and
yes.
But yeah.
Just for my reference, so that I
Yeah.
can,
In real interview,
include
don't
this.
refer anything. Just be natural. There should be natural pauses and ums and ahs, and like you are thinking, and recalling things, and that will take time. That will maybe kill some of your 1 hour or whatever discussion you have, and also look very natural.
Yeah.
Instead of having
Yes.
something on screen and referring it or in the paper. So go with the flow, I would.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. If you get into anything you want to talk, you have my number. You can reach out to us.
Yes,
And
definitely.
best of luck.
Thank you.
Let's
Thank
connect
you.
afterwards. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.